Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's my first 8:30 a.m. live stream for a week or so, and unfortunately tomorrow may be my last for a while or so, as I have to attend to some family business, not least my daughter actually getting married. So here behind me, what you see is the rig, the workover rig that is in place now. The scaffolding is complete, and although it's not the 3-container high sound screen that Third Energy had permission for in their planning application, it's probably the equivalent of 3 containers high, but it's ostensibly 1 container supporting a scaffolding structure with a plastic membrane in front of it. So I'm not sure how that is actually going to work as the sound screen. And of course the intention is that it's more of a vision screen. It's to stop any scrutiny of what Third Energy are actually doing here. Now, yesterday it was announced that Third Energy have been granted permission to start 24/7 working. Now, this is either an indication that they're behind schedule, or they want to minimize the potential for disruption by the anti-fracking community and the local community here at Kirby Misperton. So what are they going to be doing over the next 2 weeks? Well, basically the intention of Third Energy is to run a 4.5-inch liner in the well. Now, in the description of the work, Third Energy said they were going to run that liner down the bottom 5,500 feet of the well, but more recently I've seen one of Third Energy's technical staff actually talk about running it the entire length of the well. So either way, they have to run at least a mile of 4.5-inch casing, cement that in place, and then pressure test it before they can actually start the frack. But if they are able to complete this within the next 2 weeks, it's quite possible that they could be actually looking to rig up the ironwork here before the end of October, and looking to actually start the 5-stage test frack here in early to mid-November. That assumes that everything goes according to their expectations, and that the geology doesn't have different ideas. Well, one can certainly hope. So it's absolutely crucial now that people start to recognize that it is now nearly 5 years since the moratorium was lifted on unconventional gas exploitation in the UK. Moratorium being lifted in early December of 2012. So everything that's occurred since, Borkham, Barton Moss, Crawberry Hill, West Newton, Ellesmere Port, everything that's occurred up to now has not actually resulted in a test frack. Although I think that there's some conjecture that Rattling Energy did actually pressurize the well at West Newton before they lost control of it, and it actually caught fire, and they had problems with the well and eventually had to abandon the well. So they didn't actually complete the frack. So here, Third Energy have every intention of being the first company to pressurize a well up to the levels where the geology will fracture. And then, of course, we get into pretty much the unknown, because despite what the regulatory bodies say about gold standard regulation, the reality is that geology cannot be regulated, as Quadrilla, of course, found out back in 2011 at Priest Hall. Now, another issue that I think absolutely needs to be understood is that Third Energy claim that they will not be flaring here at Kirby Misperton, and their intent is to pipe the gas from here to their Knapton generating station a few miles to the east of here. So any rogue emissions, well, there may be some here of course, but rogue emissions and flaring will take place at Knapton. And this is where, you know, the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive basically do this. It's somebody else's responsibility. And you know, so any suggestion that we have gold standard regulation, or any suggestion that we have people within the Environment Agency and Health and Safety Executive who understand the full magnitude of risk here is actually a bit of a pipe dream, and they'll learn the hard way when shit happens and stuff goes wrong. So it's a crucial time in the history, if you like, of unconventional gas exploitation in the UK. Northern Ireland, Wales, and of course last week Scotland have all effectively found ways to make sure that the unconventional gas industry cannot get a foothold in their particular area of responsibility. So those countries have the luxury of now being relaxed that there's not going to be a frack anytime soon. Here in England, though, the whole of the north of England is being targeted. And here at Kirby Misperton, we're right in the heart of the Yorkshire pedals, the petroleum exploration and development licenses, but of course they extend the other side of the Pennines as well into Lancashire. So for 5 years, and all the people in that time that have done their research and looked at this industry and look at the horrendous devastation that it has caused wherever it's established a footprint, the contamination of the water, the soil, the air, the impact on human health, on livestock health, the impact on agriculture is all undeniable. Yet here, for some reason, the British public still believe that their government would lie to them. Well, once the scales start falling away from your eyes, it's amazing what you can actually see. Now, yesterday at Kirby Misperton, it was a bit of a crazy day. And there were 7 arrests, 2 of which were part of an early morning lock-on. But the behaviour of the police is actually right in keeping with a high-level interdepartmental government communication that I was shown at the weekend. Now, knowing where the individual who showed it to me works, I have absolutely no reason to doubt the authenticity of this document. And basically, what this document alluded to was that the North Yorkshire Police and Lancashire Police are effectively being set up to fail. And the instruction being passed down is to obviously do whatever it takes to get this industry rolling at Preston Road and here at Kirby Misperton. But the intention is to destroy the underlying trust between the police and local communities. And of course you would say, well, why on earth would they want to do that? Well, the final sentence in this communication was pretty Orwellian, because basically it said the objective is to create a motivation for change that is greater than the motivation to remain with the status quo. So what is the change that they're looking to initiate? Well, the clue should be in the recent government leaks that they are looking at the prospect of giving private security organisations such as G4S and Serco the powers of arrest. Now, there's no doubt that there is little appetite amongst senior levels in the British police to be caught up in corporate policing. Obviously it's a massive drain in resources, and right now, or yesterday certainly, you had the head of North Yorkshire Police's fraud and economic crime squad in charge of the police support unit here, behaving pretty outrageously. And I'm sure there's other things that they would prefer to be doing. So there's a motivation within the police not to get involved in this type of operation. But if the police don't get involved, then who does? Well, this is where G4S and Serco come in. So what the British government is looking to achieve is a delineation between effectively civilian policing and corporate policing. And once you get to this stage, and I know it's a very emotive term, but you are literally in a fascist state, because that is where the corporations are effectively in control of government policy. And of course the corporations have literally their own private armies in the guise of G4S and Serco. And in fact, if you search for Lincolnshire Police and G4S, you'll see that in Lincolnshire almost all the support functions are now the responsibility of G4S, and they are literally wearing lapels that have Lincolnshire Police and G4S alongside each other. So this is quite a sinister turn, but it explains what's going on here. And of course, unfortunately, some of the police here relish this opportunity to mix it with this local community that just won't roll over and bow down to a government agenda. And it's really, really sad to see these 20 and 30 something police officers, and some who are old enough to know better, manhandling people from this, rural community who have in most cases never had any contact with the police. In fact, their vision of policing in North Yorkshire is little more than Nick Berry riding a motorbike across the moors in Heartbeat. And yet here they're up close and personal with the thuggery of the PSU. So this is really now a multifaceted campaign in many respects, because number one, it's about protecting the country from this insidious unconventional gas industry. Number two, it's about protecting the last vestiges of what we believe to be democracy. And one would like to think that there is sufficient integrity within the British police to resist this agenda to corporatise the police, at least at the level of corporate enforcement. Because at that juncture, then basically this country becomes unrecognisable and actually will start to bear a tragic resemblance to what was occurring elsewhere in Europe nearly a century ago. Now, if you think that this is scaremongering or this is overreaction, that's of course exactly what the establishment wants you to think. But let me assure you that I never discuss anything unless there is the supporting evidence to back up what I'm saying here. And I implore you, do your own research. Look at what is occurring in this country, because potentially the legacy that we are leaving future generations just doesn't bear thinking about. So the front line right now on the east of England is over here at Kirby Misperton. On the west of the Pennines, it's at Preston New Road. And we may not have too much longer, because if this is successful, and I'll use that term loosely, for Third Energy, and they get the flow rates that they are anticipating, then we are going to very quickly see a spread of unconventional gas applications, primarily from INEOS, right across the country. And of course we have the INEOS injunction hearing, which is now I think scheduled for the 30th and 31st of October. And this is an attempt, and as you will, if you go along to hear the court hearings, what you will learn is that some very senior British police officers have colluded with the British government and with INEOS to bring about this injunction to effectively establish a new raft of, well, legislation, but certainly legal precedent to prevent dissent, to prevent community opposition. And for those who watched the live stream that I did, I think almost 2 weeks ago now, where I pointed out that there is a much deeper agenda to this, and that is the use of these deep boreholes, the network of deep boreholes across the north of England to bury nuclear waste, toxic nuclear waste that is currently held in temporary storage around the country. And of course it is Sheffield University, under the guidance of Professor Fergus Gibb, that is on point in doing the research for the use of deep boreholes for the disposal of toxic nuclear waste. So I appreciate that many people are not able to participate in any way, shape or form here, because sadly over the last 40-50 years or so, this country has reached a point now where the vast majority of people are in debt, massively in debt, and have to work 24/7, and both partners have to work 24/7 to keep a roof over their head and food on their table, which is why the propensity of Jerry activists, to participate in this is so high, because this is probably the last generation that has the luxury of both time and financial independence to be able to express an alternative view. Other people come down in the mornings, some come down in the evenings, and we have obviously single mothers, and yesterday we had a farmer's wife who came down and was outrageously arrested. Again, loss of control by some of the officers on the ground here. But it needs people. Yesterday there were 100 people here. It changed the whole dynamic. If there were 200 or 300 people here every single day, then it would change the dynamic exponentially. And the British government might just be forced into a rethink. The moment, though, they are simply just riding roughshod over local communities. And of course, you're in the north. We're here in the north. We're a long way from London. And as Lord Howe infamously said a little over 4 years ago, we shouldn't frack in the south of England. We should frack in the desolate northeast. And then, of course, the following day, he attempted to correct himself by saying, well, I didn't actually mean the desolate northeast, I meant the desolate northwest. So if anybody really wanted an insight into how London-based politicians regard the north, then basically I'm standing right now in the heart of a sacrifice zone. And it's up to you as to whether this is a sacrifice zone and within a decade or so is effectively uninhabitable. Choice is yours.